Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Stephen, Rabbi Shmuel, Rashbi with you with this week's Devar Torah, this week's Torah portion. So I hope you're all doing well. The weather's starting to change. We're starting to get a little hotter, so please stay cool. So one of the exciting events that we have coming up, and it is fairly exciting, is we're going to have somebody from an organization called Sofer on site join us at the synagogue. And this is a person, a gentleman, a rabbi, who is specially trained to look over the Torah. Now, some of you may remember that we had somebody come in last year, and this also a sofer, look at a couple of our Torah scrolls, and unfortunately, we have two Torah scrolls that are really, they're not beyond repair, but for what it would take to make them kosher, we might as well just get a new one. So what is a sofer, and what does it mean for a Torah scroll to be kosher? A sofer, from the word sefer, a scribe, is somebody that knows how to write a Torah. So there are congregations, and I'd love to, for us here at Temple Shalom of Ontario, to hire a sofer to come out and write a brand new Torah scroll for us. Now, it's pretty expensive. It can get a little costly, but for congregations that have had the money to do it and people, it's a very exciting event. What a lot of congregations do is, everybody chips in, people donate, some a little bit more than others. And by your donation, you're able, or you get the privilege of actually writing a letter in that scroll, which basically fulfills the mitzvah of writing a Torah scroll. Imagine the excitement of looking at a Torah scroll, of picking it up on a Saturday or on a festival or on a minyan, a weekly minyan, opening it up, reading a Torah, and looking at a word and knowing that you were the one that wrote that letter. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. So maybe one of these days, it will get to that point and it'd be nice. Now, what makes a Torah scroll kosher? The letters have to be specific. A lot of you have asked me, when we read the Shema, why is the ayin and the dalet of Shema, the ayin in Shema, and the dalet in echad, the last word, enlarged? This is specific. This is special. Every Torah scroll that was ever written has those two letters enlarged. And there are other letters that are enlarged. There are some letters that are a little smaller. And there are some letters that have dots over them. And they all have to have the same embellishments, et cetera, et cetera. And you have to be able to look at it and read it. Now, one of the reasons that the dalet is enlarged is so it's not confused with a resh. The two letters are very similar looking, but if you were to look at that and think it's a resh instead of a dalet, or you look at a Torah scroll and it's not clear, the result will be blasphemous. Instead of saying the Lord our God, the Lord is one, you're saying the Lord is after, and basically what you're saying is you're saying that he's an idol. God's an idol. So that's why it has to be specific. So please join us. I know it's July 4th. Unfortunately, that's reality. It's the way it is, and if you can make it, great. If not, well, we'll take some pictures. All right, let's talk about Baha'alotcha, which is the new portion, and it talks about the silver trumpets that were used to summon and have the men from the tribes to muster, have summon the tribes, and there were codes as to it blows along. Don't. I would fail a quiz. I've read it many times, but I believe the first blast was long, then it was staccato. Kind of like what we do on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur when we do, through da 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 da, and the first blast alerted people that the first group, led by Judah, would assemble, then the second group by Reuben, and then the Levites would join them, and that's kind of how it was a call to order, kind of like Reveille in the military. Is there a connection? I don't know for sure, but I would put money on that there is. Okay, that's how troops are summoned. We did it first. So We've heard so far in Numbers, which is why it's called Numbers. We've heard a census, and we've had all the tribes bring the same offerings, of animals and precious metals for the upkeep of the temple. And now we're seeing the organization of them marching. So things are starting to look good, right? Wrong. Unfortunately, the grumbling, I want to say it's starting, but it's already starting. Now it's starting to pick up. And as we're going to see more and more in Numbers, the results are going to be disastrous. We know what happens. But the grumbling is, Egypt wasn't that bad. In fact, it was great because it was like a fish buffet. We had all the fish we could eat. Isn't it amazing how memory will do that to you sometimes? These people were doing back-breaking work for nothing, work to break their spirits and to kill. They were being worked. They were literally being worked to death. And yet they're remembering with fondness how the Nile had all this wonderful water and there was so much fish more than they could eat. And they start grumbling. And, part of it is like, what's the matter? The manna isn't good enough for you. You eat manna. Or you can eat it plain. They used to bake it into cakes. They used to make whatever they did with it, however they cooked it. And it tasted exactly like your favorite dish. Now, I don't want to say that if you ate manna, it tasted like fried chicken or whatever, but the flavoring it was specific to everybody that ate it. And now they want meat. So remember, God had given them some, sent some quail to them, but now God he's just seeing these people. He's like, my gosh, you can't do enough for these people. And they're still grumbling. So he said, they're going to eat meat, not just for a day, for a week, for a month. They're going to be eating meat until it's coming out of their nostrils. And that's a quote from the text. And of course, what happens? And there's a fire, and they paid the price. It was basically their last meal. If that wasn't bad enough, now we have Aaron and Miriam starting to talk a little bit about Moses. Now some of the gossip is starting. Now you think, my gosh, Miriam isn't really mentioned a lot in the Torah. Her status is accepted as the first prophetess. Here she is, Moses' sister. And there's Aaron, Moses' brother, who becomes the high priest, and to whom the lineage of the priests starts. And there's Moses, the greatest prophet of them all. Moses had a direct communication with God. Moses and God would talk like you meet somebody for coffee. Whereas other prophets, they have to go into a trance, they get a dream. Like look at Jacob. When he fought the angel, he was dreaming, right? Moses talked to Hashem one-on-one. So you would think that Aaron and Miriam, being part of the family, they of course had their vision as well. But now Miriam is starting to talk about the way Moses treats his wife. Now Moses was a busy guy. All right, when Jethro, his father-in-law, encounters him, he's sitting there, adjudicating for all the people. There was a whole line, of Israelites wanting to get his judgment on things. And you can imagine how his wife Zipporah was doing. Now, maybe she was, and we got kind of assumed that she understood. She knew to whom she was married, and she dealt with it. Miriam didn't think it was quite fair. She's like, Moses, you don't have to be doing all this. And instead of going to him and say, look, I'm your sister. You've got this wife. Why don't you take a day off? We got the Shabbat. You don't have to work so much. Instead, she's going around talking to people, and Aaron too. So what happens? It's the first case where someone actually gets tsaros. They start to get those blotches. See, I almost said leprosy, but it wasn't really leprosy. It was something completely different than any medical disease on the books today. And yes, they broke out in sores, the blotches and everything. Now, for them, it only lasted a week because they were great people. And the fact that they were great people and the fact that they did start gossiping, folks, nobody's immune. Right? You could be the greatest prophet in the world, like Moses, you could be the lowliest servant. We're all equal in the eyes of Hashem, and we all have the same temptations. It's not that some people basically deal with it better than others. And is it a matter of nature or is it a matter of choice? I personally think, we all have our challenges in life, so, you just kind of deal with it. The point is, when you're as great as Aaron and Miriam, your punishment's going to be that much worse because you know better. Leaders have a responsibility, they have an innate responsibility just because they're leaders and because everybody is looking to them for guidance. You mess up and you're that important, yeah, the punishment's going to be a little bit worse, maybe even a lot worse. Okay, we will see you in service. We'll see you in services. We will see you for our active shooter training. A horrible thing, but we have to do it. Tuesday, 7 o'clock here at the synagogue. We'll see you for services. We have another Mitzvah coming up. We'll see you for that. Thank you, as always, for listening. And again, Shabbat Shalom.